Welcome, gardeners. I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Aiden.
And we're from Canyon Lake, California. You're watching the Urban Gardener channel. Now,
let's get growing!
So, all right, here we are. Welcome, gardeners, to Let's Get Growing, your weekly gardening live stream here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch, and I'll be your host today. We have a really exciting show for you. We've got Scott Head of Black Gumbo Southern Gardening with us as our featured guest later on in the show. We also have with us Rachel from Oxheart Gardening for our channel of the week, and we're following Sisters in the Garden this week on Instagram. So stay tuned for all of these really great guests. And also, if you are here with us now, be sure to get over into our chat box and leave a question or comment for us there. And maybe a little bit later on, we'll feature it on the show. And also remember to give this video a big thumbs up. Also, click on that subscribe button so you can continue following with us here on the Urban Gardener channel and the Let's Get Growing show. And also, check out our website at letsgetgrowing.live so that you can also go down to the bottom of the page and click on our newsletter. We should have one coming out real soon, so sign up for that there. And also, in order to support our show here at Let's Get Growing, you can support our sponsor, IV Organics, at ivorganics.com and use our promo code GROW10 so you can save 10% off of all the really cool things that they've got there at ivorganics.com. So here we are this week, and I knew this was coming someday. So actually, we have me just running the show today. We'd like to wish our producer Asia to get well real soon. She just had to have a surgery yesterday, so she isn't able to help me run this show. So here I am. I'm taking care of it myself. We'll see how well we do. But I think everything should really go great. Like I said, we've got some really great guests with us today to talk all about all sorts of things gardening. And I'm really glad that all of you are here showing up and joining with us here in our chat, and all of you who are also following along with us on our replay. So, and also all of you out there who are listening to us on our podcast. That's also another reason to check out our website, letsgetgrowing.live. You can find out the information about our podcast as well, which is available on all of your different podcast apps out there. Just look for Let's Get Growing. And it's good to hear all or see all of you, or have all of you listen to us here on the podcast. Again, I'm trying to run everything here all myself, and hopefully we'll keep everything together, but we should have a really great show for you today. For me, I've actually finally been able to get out into the garden this last week and not do too much gardening, as it's all really that time of year for me where I'm really just trying to get everything together. It's after winter, things are overgrown, there's tons of weeds out there, there's things that need to be repaired or fixed, all sorts of stuff. I had an issue too in the alleyway where we grow here as well, where someone removed a tree from one of my neighbor's yard and tore up one of our garden boxes. So that's a real big project for me, is to get all of that space and everything all together as well too, and to be able to get everything ready to grow. So I'm getting more and more excited about everything. I did actually get a few seeds planted out too. So we've got some things seeded out. You know, I've got like spinach, onions, lots of different greens and things that are going out there. So we're getting all of that stuff started. So really excited about seeing all of these things finally getting growing in our garden as well around here. We also have some garden space that I have over at my friend's place too. We built out or dug out these big giant 20-foot by 40-foot plots in his big corner front yard. And that's where we actually planted most all of our garlic this year. So it's really cool to see it finally up and really starting to get growing too as the weather's starting to warm up here and coming out of all of those freezes. And we also planted up a bunch of spinach and greens and things like that out there as well. So we're kind of working both of those spaces right now. But again, just a really exciting time of year to be able to finally get out, get my hands in the dirt, start getting digging and planting and just, doing all the things that we need to do to get our gardening year started here. So really exciting time of year again. So we got a lot of that going there. I'll have a video coming up here too, which will get our garden journals started. So we'll cover all of that sort of stuff that we've got growing out in our garden. But for right now, let's go check in with Mark on In the Garden with NBC.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Get Growing live, and you're in the garden with NBC right now. Guess where we are? We're on the rooftop of Noble Rot Restaurant, where I am the rooftop gardener. And today I want to focus on what you should have sort of stocking the pantry to be ready for the season. Spring is coming, spring is variable across the country, even in our region. We'll have like 3 days that feel like spring, 5 days that feel like winter, a week that feels like spring, 3 days to winter, back and forth, back and forth. But you want to be ready for whatever bursts, whatever windows nature gives you. So I'm going to kind of go through some of the stuff that I have stocked, ready to go at all times. And that just allows me to respond quickly when I need to. I'm ready for anything. So first thing is, I have a number of different seeds. Whatever I'm planting, especially outside in direct seeding, I have a good quantity of various seeds. This is a really lovely frilly green mustard called wasabina. Plant a lot of that. This is some chervil that I'm planting in the spring and we'll plant again in the fall. Important thing about seeds is you want to keep them out of the sun, and you want them in a waterproof, the sun and heat I should say, and in a waterproof airtight container. So here I have a mason jar with a rubber sealing lid, and this packet comes with its own Ziploc. These are both kept in a plastic bin, and the bin is kept in the shade. So really important to keep your seeds in good condition, and the two things that will get seeds every time, they get them growing and they also reduce their lifespan, is heat and moisture. So if you want your seeds to germinate, give them heat and moisture. If you want them not to germinate and to stay viable for as long as you can, take them out of the heat, get them dry. So have your seeds stocked and ready to go, whatever you want to seed en masse. I keep other things in the grow room that I showed you a couple of weeks ago. And those kind of things are the stuff that I'm planting in pots and for transplant out. But I also do a lot of direct seeding, and that's all kept right up here. One thing to go along with seeds, especially legume seeds, peas and beans, is this stuff called inoculant, garden inoculant. It's a black powder, and you just dust it on peas and beans. You can do other things. There's various inoculants for various things, but most people plant peas, beans, and fava beans in that legume family, and there's usually a general pea bean inoculant that you can get at your garden store or special order. Make sure you have enough of that. Again, keep that out of light and heat, and that's usually got a 1 year time span. In addition to my seeds, I have a variety of fertilizers. So for example, here I've got some fish bone meal. This is high in phosphorus, and so that's going to be for my spring plantings of peas. And later on, I'll probably use that for peppers and for other fruiting and flowering crops. So that's going to emphasize fruiting and flowering. Here I have some bat guano. You can't really see this, but this is high in nitrogen, soluble nitrogen. So that's going to be great for early season greens. And then I have a basic all-purpose fertilizer that I use that has the numbers 322. So basically balance between the three major nutrients. The numbers refer to nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, 322. So that's kind of a balanced fertilizer, where something like fish bone meal, you can see it's heavily weighted toward the phosphorus, has no potassium, and much less nitrogen. So sometimes I'm looking for a particular targeted kind of fertilizer. Sometimes I'm looking for something all-purpose. I make sure I have all of it in stock, ready to go. Another thing I keep on hand, especially in the spring and fall, is some liquid fertilizer. Again, you'll see the numbers here, 402. That's signaling us that that's got a lot of nitrogen compared with anything else. No phosphorus, actually 402, some potassium, and that's going to stimulate green leafy growth. So in the springtime, I want to get a quick boost. I want to give my plants something that's soluble, already liquefied, ready to go, that they can take and just start growing. So I make sure I have some liquid fertilizer, and I'm supplementing with liquid fertilizer. As the temperatures warm up, not always as important, unless I have a plant in a container that's hard to keep fertilizing it in terms of in the soil or top dressing. I may want to keep giving that certain kinds of liquid fertilizer. Some peppers, for example, I'll switch to a phosphorus liquid fertilizer. So after the initial fertilizer that I mixed into the pot has worn off, I'm going to keep supplementing in August to keep those peppers pumping out all the way into the fall. There's always going to be pests. You want to be ready for them. One of our biggest ones is slugs. So I have some Sluggo here. This is Sluggo Plus. We've had some problems with pill bugs, and so this also deals with pill bugs. This is basically iron phosphate. It does have some spinosad to kill some of the other stuff. It's listed under Omri Organics. Iron phosphate is fairly neutral. Spinosad is an insecticide. It will kill other beneficials. Just be aware of that. There's just a basic Sluggo you can get that has iron phosphate that's good for slugs and snails. But we want to have some things around to protect our crops. There's nothing worse than putting out a beautiful planting of transplants and then watching them get ravaged by those little buggers. And so trying to keep that off, I usually do a preventative distribution early in the spring. I find as the summer goes on, it's not as much of a problem. As things warm up and dry up here in the Pacific Northwest, the slugs aren't as much of a problem, but they can be ferocious in the spring. Let's talk about some of the ways I keep track of my crops. Last couple of years, I've been buying these thin wooden stakes. I get them from a company called A.M. Leonard. This year I got them painted. Last year I got the plain wood. I noticed that because it was pretty thin, they rot fast. Sometimes I go to some place like a big box store and just get a bundle of lath that I will cut and sand. That's very thick and it lasts many seasons. This year I'm going to try the painted things for convenience. I got a whole box of them. There's a couple of hundred in there. I also have upgraded to a nursery marker from my usual just Sharpie. My Sharpie was fading in the sun. I was noticing it didn't last the whole season. So this nursery marker promises not to fade. So I've got the supplies that I need to mark what I've planted. So important. I mark the date. I mark the kind of crop and the variety name. I mark the seed source and the year. That way I can tell what's going on. I can trace things back. If I'm using some older seed that I'm just testing out, I may realize, yeah, that didn't make the grade. It's not germinating. I know why. It just gives me the information that I need. Up here at Noble Rod, I'm also communicating with chefs. I want to let them know what's planted, so I want to make sure they see it clearly. That way they can communicate to the staff in the kitchen and also to the patrons, like what exactly they're eating. Everybody wants to know that, right? Anyway, good marking in the field really helps with record keeping. So get yourself set up before the season so you're not scrambling at the moment. I've got some stuff for support. Of course, as our vegetables start to grow, even our flowers, they're gonna need some support. Here at Noble Rot, we have a lot of wind. So oftentimes I need some extra stuff. So I have a lot of twine on hand, and then I've been buying some 3-foot bamboo stakes already made, already cut. These are, I forget what diameter, but small, thin. You can get all different kinds, all different sorts. You know, I recommend investing in some of this stuff, having it at the ready, because there's nothing like getting to the point in the season when you realize your crops have outgrown whatever little initial support you gave them, and they're about to topple over, or you come out one morning and your glorious peas, your snap peas or your snow peas that looked so wonderful the day before, have overloaded and just fallen in. Your pole beans, whatever it is, have collapsed. You want to try to have all your trellising material at the ready so that you are ready for it ahead of time. You're taking advance action. Some of this stuff you're putting in right as you're planting, or as it matures a little bit, maybe you have a cover over it, you remove the cover and boom, you've got your materials in. So this is the kind of just what I call stocking the pantry that I think is so important to prepare yourself for a great and successful season. Go through, I know everybody's in a different region, everybody's kind of got a different gardening system, but go through and think through what's going to be coming up in your garden year. What's coming up that, you know, what didn't go well last year? What do you need to make sure is in place right now at the very beginning of the season, so that as things start to unfold, you know we're gonna be busy. We're gonna be crazy busy, and we're gonna love it, but we don't want to be missing important things. We don't want to be risking the development of our crops because we didn't think something through. So get it done now, stock your pantry, and hey, have a great season. I wish you a great growing season. We'll see you next week on In the Garden with NBC. I'm gonna give you guys a little panorama here of the view from Noble Rot. There's some old fennel still hanging out. Beautiful spring day today here in Portland, Oregon. We're on Portland's east side. Great view of the city on a clear day. What a lovely place to work and garden. A rooftop garden is an amazing thing. Convention Center, Fremont Bridge, our gigantic forest park there, that forested area. Big Pink, our signature skyscraper downtown. Really get to see it all. I love standing up here on a lovely day and watching the traffic on the freeway and realizing I'm not in that. I'm standing up here and I'm feeling great. I'm not stuck in traffic. I'm enjoying the best of urban life. Anyway, here it is, In the Garden with NBC at Noble Rot.
All right, another great segment by Mark at the Noble Rot restaurant. It's a 4-story building in downtown Portland where he has the pleasure of running their gardens for them up on top of that building there, and they utilize all of those things that he grows right there in their kitchen, as he talked about. And one of the first visits I got to do, actually, when I was first starting up this channel here, was to go up there and check out that really awesome garden that they have up there too. So really cool. So if you're ever in Portland, be sure to go check out Noble Rot. Maybe go see Mark up there taking care of and tending the garden up there. And real quick, I just wanted to go over with you all too. We do have a question of the week segment that we have here on the show. And I just wanted to review that with you all real quick here. So maybe all of you who are joining with us here live can get into the comment section there and give us some answers to our weekly questions. So this last week we asked, what's your hardest gardening challenge? So let us know what your hardest gardening challenge is there in the comments. Maybe we'll get to some of those comments here just a little bit later in the show. But right now, we're going to jump into our next segment. And that segment's going to be...
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right. This week's Instagram that we're following is Sisters in the Garden. Sisters in the Garden is 3 sisters set in Davis County along the Wasatch Mountains. When they started their Instagram page, it was purely for fun and a creative way for them to share as they've organically gained more and more followers and had so many people message them to let them know that their page has inspired them to garden and try new things, has made all of the time spent worth it. They each have their individual strengths and wanted to share with others to inspire them to learn something that has become an outdated hobby and way of life. So let's welcome with us Sisters in the Garden to the show. Hi, how are we doing? Welcome
Can you hear
to
us?
Let's Get Growing.
Thanks. Can you hear us okay?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Here, let
Okay.
me, I gotta do one thing here. Make sure we're not getting too much echo there. But yeah, so how are you all doing? How's everything growing in your gardens?
Not really.
Not yet.
We have a lot of
Not
seedlings.
really, not
growing.
yet.
Yeah, we've got
Similar
snow
issues probably with weather and all of that, right?
Yep, we've had snow all week, and we have. I think it's for the next 2 days we have snow. So
Yeah.
we just have seedlings growing.
Awesome, awesome. So I'll give you a real chance here to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit more about your Instagram and what you guys do there with your gardens.
Okay, you want to go?
Well, first off, we're obviously missing a sister. She's out of town, so unfortunately she is not with us. But I'm Megan. This is
I'm Jess.
Jess, and then Nikki Nix is out of town, so she's not with us today. But I don't know. Do you want to start off?
Well, do you want to just know kind of how we got started then? Is that
Yeah.
okay? Well, we have on both sides of our family, we have gardeners. So on one side of our family, our grandma had a huge garden and an orchard, and we just spent summers going to her house and picking cherries and beans and all kinds of stuff to bring home and can. And our mom canned a lot of food, and so we have lots of memories sitting in our kitchen processing all that. And then we also had a grandma who lived in Roseburg, Oregon, and she had the most amazing rose garden. And so we have memories of going to her house and just smelling her roses and hanging out in there. So it's just kind of something we grew up with. And so that's kind of what inspired us to just having them. But
I was going to say I kind of wasn't a part of the Roseburg, Oregon. I was a little too young, but same. I just remember going to my grandmother's house in Bountiful, Utah, and she had a huge garden, and she had us picking all kinds of stuff. And there's a lot of canning going on when we were younger. But I wasn't really into gardening until probably the last 8 or 9 years. So
Okay.
I'm kind of more of a newbie when it comes to that. Jesse has been gardening for a long time, but so.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, that's similar to me. I've just got gardening myself in probably the last 10 or so years myself. But so that's cool that you guys all kind of work together to manage your Instagram and manage the gardens and do all of that sort of stuff. How fun is that to be able to work together and do that sort of project?
yeah, lots of laughing, giggling, making
Lots
fun
of
of
laughing.
ourselves. We have a good time.
Yeah, we do. We just it's just been a good experience because we feed off each other, with different things, and when it comes to seeds or just different plants, we just kind of are able to feed off each other, which is really nice, and support each other. So it's great.
Yeah, that is a really good thing to be able to have each other, to be able to learn different things as you're each learning those different things. So what is it that each of you like most about gardening?
For me, I would say the end results.
Yeah.
I love I love to see what I can grow, how much I can get for the season. Just cooking every night. I go out into the vegetable garden and grab a bunch of vegetables to use for that night, and that's the most satisfying part for me.
Mine would be me time.
Yes.
I I think in the beginning when I started, I was dealing with some postpartum after my second child, and my sweet mother-in-law that kind of got me into gardening. She's just like a magician with the garden, and she's the one that really inspired me to start gardening. And so when I was dealing with some of that, some postpartum stuff, she was very like, hey, you should start gardening. She was very, trying to support me and encourage me. And so it was kind of like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And so I started it with just basic stuff. My concept of gardening is very open. It's just a slab of dirt. And so she basically was like, go in the sunshine, go play in the dirt, go plant something, like be out in the sunshine. I guarantee that's going to help you. And so I started doing that. And I started with really simple, like zucchini, carrots, tomatoes, something, pretty easy to grow. And then I just fell in love, and it just became almost an obsession. And so.
Yeah, it's an easy obsession to attain, because I think that, and I tell people a lot this too, is if you're dealing with things and you're having issues with whatever it is, at home, at work, just life in general, all that sort of stuff, which most of us do, there's some sort of life pressures that happen, when you get out there and you get your hands in the soil, when you're out there planting and taking care of plants, there's just this sort of, as we call it, garden therapy that happens. It's a really great place to be, to just, like you said too, have some me time, some time to kind of work out certain things while you're working in the garden. It's one of the best things. And then, like your sister said there too, that you get all of these benefits that come with it, not just the mind and soul, you get all this food that you get to enjoy, much more nutritious food that you can ever get. So what are some of your favorite plants to grow in the garden?
Do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
You go first.
My favorite is also my least favorite. And I think because I love brassicas. So I love the broccoli and the cauliflower. I have the most amazing cauliflower recipe that I love to cook. Lettuce, all those things. But I have a really big problem with aphids. They just know where it's going to be, and obviously I rotate my crops every season, but they find them. So I've had, years of just, this year I'm going to try this, and this year I'm going to try that. And I finally last year planted an entire bed of bib lettuce right next to my bed of broccoli and cauliflower. And they just attacked the lettuce, and they completely left my broccoli alone. So that was kind of exciting just to see, that they did that. I'm going to try it again this year. Hopefully I have the same success. And then I still was able to eat the lettuce because I just washed off the aphids. No big deal. Although people do tell me that you can eat them. And it just grosses me out. I would never. Yeah. But so the plants that are a lot of work, that cause a lot of stress for me, I stress, are those aphids going to attack them? Those are my least favorite because I worry about them. Where, for me, zucchini is a no worry crop for me. I've never had problems with zucchini and pumpkins and those types of things, where the broccoli and cauliflower I'm always stressed. So they're my favorite and least favorite.
So, okay. So favorite and
least favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say probably my favorite are artichokes, which, I feel like there's not a whole lot you have to do after they're, growing. But I always say artichokes, but I think I might say tomatillos.
Oh.
I think I might say tomatillos, just because I've just recently in the last few years started growing them, and I found some awesome recipes for, salsa verde and everything like that. So I think they're probably my favorite. And I've had a lot of people ask questions about them, and I've just been able to harvest a lot of them. And so I think they're probably my favorite right now. But.
Yeah, tomatillos are pretty prolific for sure. I've grown them, and I started growing them around our spaces a couple of seasons ago, about 3 or 4 seasons ago, actually. And I grew them just once myself and put seeds in. and now every year they pop up all over the place.
Oh
So
yeah.
not only are they, growing, they're also something I have to weed out
Yes.
as well too, because they do get everywhere.
Yes.
But they are great. I love tomatillos.
Yeah.
And I also have to agree about the brassicas. Brassicas remain one of my biggest challenges, but one of the things I really like the most too. I love broccoli. It's one of my favorite things. Cabbage has been a challenge for me every single year. And again, similar issues with, infestations of pests and different things like that. But again, I try year in, year out. I mention this each week pretty much on the show, is that, it is my biggest garden challenge, but I plan on, winning that challenge eventually.
Yes.
All right. So, what are some of the okay, so our question for this week was what are your hardest gardening challenges? What are those things that you find really kind of that really challenge you the most? I know we kind of covered brassicas a little bit
Well,
there in
yes.
pests, but you got some garden challenges you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think for me, taking the time to go out and spend at least minimum 5 minutes in your garden to look under leaves, check for squash bugs, check for anything starting, because for instance, Nikki has really struggled with squash bugs, and last year she was so good about checking every day, and she killed a lot of them, and they just took over. They just kept coming and coming and coming. She's like, I'm being so diligent, I'm trying so hard, and they just keep coming back. And she's got to do that for a couple years to get it under control. But same with me, I just remember to take the time, minimum of 5 minutes, but and usually for me it ends up being like an hour or so. Once I get in there, I'm in there. But that's what I think is a challenge, to just take the time to go and look under things.
Yes.
Yeah. Mine would probably be weeds, because my garden versus theirs, they have the awesome raised beds and the gravel on your ground. And Nikki's got the same concept, cement beds, and their concept is different than mine. Mine's just open ground, railroad ties around, fencing around type thing. But so because I love that, just walking in the dirt, playing in the dirt, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to put raised beds and stuff. And so, but because I choose to do that, I deal with a lot of weeds, and I try to keep it under control. I do what I can. If I go out of town, it's a forest, but that's probably my challenge. So
Yes, actually, I think that's pretty consistent amongst most gardeners, is those actually both challenges. For one, again, taking the time to do the things that you need to do, whether it's those pesky squash bugs. And believe me, I got lucky my first several seasons. I did not get very many squash bugs on all of my different squash varieties that I was growing. But the last season or two, it's amazing. And just like you said, I don't know where they come from. And I don't know how they get so prolific, and they grow extremely fast, as they go from these just little things to these big old bugs climbing all over the place, and they
And
get
can I
really
say
hard to.
how ugly they are when they hatch? Like
Oh,
little alien, they are so gross.
they're so gross.
So gross. They just creep me out when they hatch. Oh,
they're disgusting. They're
gross.
disgusting. Actually, this last year, I resorted to getting like a little hand vac and started vacuuming them up, because it just got to be so much, and so much of a task to try to keep after every year. So I thought that it was actually good, but again, if you're not finding all of those eggs that seem to get everywhere, and if you've got a lot of leaves and a lot of plants, they just find themselves all over the place. and become nearly impossible to take care of. But one of those ones that, like you said, and of course, weeds. Weeds is the, really the bane of the existence of all gardeners. They just come and come and come, similar, I guess, to the squash bugs too. And you've got to pull them out, you've got to take them out. And again, also going back to the tomatillos, it's amazing the things that actually become weeds too, when you start letting things just kind of freely drop in all the different seeds, if you're growing a lot of different varieties of things. So let's see here. So again, we kind of talked about in your bio, but what, let's go over again what really inspired you guys to really get started with taking all of these experiences in all of your gardening and all of that, and going and sharing it with everybody on Instagram. I mean, you guys have really done a great job with your Instagram.
Well,
And
thank you.
gotta be amazed at all of those. Really, when you have around 111,000 followers. Wow, that's really good.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
It's been fun. It's been surprising, but it's been very fun.
We've had a really good time, which is why we started it. I started my first garden. Well, I started with flowers, but I started my first garden back in probably 2011 at a different house. And I started kind of learning that way, just trial and error. And then when Megan started hers, 2013-ish, we both just on our own learned and compared notes, and it was kind of fun for us to say, hey, look what I got to grow, or look what I totally killed,
look what I failed,
and then I would give her starts or she'd give me starts, and it just kind of started from there. And then I moved and had my husband build me a little garden sanctuary where I can just go and hide. If my kids are being stinkers, I can go in there and hide, or whatever. It's like my gated sanctuary. And her husband did the same thing and kind of enclosed hers from her dogs eating her vegetables. And everyone just kept saying, why are you not sharing this with others? Why are you not, you guys know so much, and why are you not doing something with it? And I'm not really technologically savvy, and
I'm not either.
So we just were like, well, maybe we'll start an Instagram and just post some fun things. And then our baby sister is really good at houseplants and cooking. She's an amazing cook. And so we kept saying to her, you should come do it with us. And so it's just turned into this fun sisters. We share starts with each other. Nikki will share her houseplants with us. And it's just been a fun thing. And we've gained a garden community where we try to get to everyone's messages. We try to not ever let messages go unanswered on DMs, but people will message us and just say, I had this problem. What do you think? And it's just been fun to meet people. I've gone out to lunch with people that we've met on Instagram. I mean, it's just been so much fun. So
agreed.
Anything to add to that?
No, that's, she said it.
She said it. That's right. And that's again one of those things that I found too. And it's kind of something, your story is kind of similar, as you had people kind of encourage you to do that. And that's what's similar. I've got a small urban garden utilizing some different spaces. I grow in an alleyway. And at the time when I started getting advice about sharing what I was doing, I was growing up on a rooftop of a carport, all of these pepper plants. I had this really cool pepper garden up there. And being on an alleyway and being in the neighborhood, I'd have people who would come by. I mean, literally, like, just come by. Hey, I saw what you're doing. Tell me a little bit more about it. And then a few people would be like, hey, you need to share this. And, I started with, like a Facebook page. And then eventually, it was a couple of people I had communicated with through YouTube were like, hey, you should make some videos and show everybody what you're doing. And from there, here we are, you guys as well, right here on our show, Let's Get Growing. It all becomes some of this, something that's even bigger than what we envisioned it to begin with, but we've gained this really awesome community. There's nothing or no community better in my mind than the gardening community out there. There's so many wonderful people. And again, one of the real reasons why I started this show was to be able to talk with all of you wonderful, awesome people. And it's been really awesome to have you guys on our show today. I really want to thank you. And when you get a chance, say hi to your sister for me.
Thank you.
We will.
All right. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you so
You guys
much.
are awesome. All right. What a great interview there with Sisters in the Garden. Be sure again to go check out their Instagram page, Sisters in the Garden, and go follow them and see all of the really great things that they have growing on in their garden. And let's see here. We need to, again, I'm running this show myself, so I'm trying to keep up with these different tabs and everything that we need to be doing. But let's see here. Next thing we want to do, we'll have another segment coming up here. Again, I wanted to show you all. Where's it at? There it is. What's your hardest gardening challenge? Be sure to get into the comments section there and let us know what your hardest gardening challenge is. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. And we'll take a little break here.
Ivy Organic was founded on the gardening concept of whitewashing, simply lightening your plants to better tolerate weather extremes, transplant shock, and so much more. Such a valuable gardening practice that farmers have been doing it since BC times. However, in recent years, most research has been caring for plants and trees using latex and tar-based products which are designed to last 100 years but fall off your plants within 1 to 2 years as your plants grow, contaminating your garden soil indefinitely. Ivy Organic gives organic commercial orchards and backyard growers an organic and healthier alternative. Also, unlike latex and tar-based products, Ivy Organic dries on porous, allowing moisture and nutrients to pass so that your coated surfaces such as grafting wounds and pruned branches will not rot. Available in colors white or more natural looking colors such as brown, green, gray, and grayish. White naturally reflects the most amount of heat, but all colors offer protection on unprotected surfaces from the elements. Ivy Organic has 2 general categories of whitewash products. The 3-in-1 Plant Guard, which includes 7 natural oils, including castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint, which offer insect and rodent repellent protection, and the Whitewash Oil-Free formula. Both products also have diatomaceous earth in the base ingredients, which naturally offer some insect repellent protection too. As always, keep growing with Ivy Organics and wishing you all happy gardening.
All right. Again, another great way to support our show here is also to support our sponsors there, Ivy Organics. Go check them out, ivyorganics.com, and use our grow code or our promo code GROW10 to get 10% off of all the great things that they have there, including that whitewash, which is really a great thing for all of your trees. We have some container trees here in our gardens that I like to get that on in order to protect them, not just from the sun or even some of that, like it's a winter scold that can happen, but it's a really great organic product that has some properties in it that really helps with some pest control when it comes to your trees as well too. Let's see. Again, we are talking about our what's your hardest gardening challenge? So we had some answers for our question for what's your hardest gardening challenge on our Facebook group, the Let's Get Growing group on Facebook. You can check that out there and participate with our weekly questions. You can also share some of your garden stories, pictures. Let us know all about all the different things that you've got growing on in your garden, and join all of our great gardeners in our garden community. So Lisa Gibson said one of her hardest gardening challenges was her knees and the deer. It's a toss-up. I gotta agree with that. There's nothing like trying to get back up after being down in the down on the ground level there too after a little while. Those knee joints can really take it when you're trying to do, like we were saying, pulling all of those weeds and everything in the garden can be really tough. Let's see. Ann Thompson says slugs. Slugs, yes. Again, pests. Pests are probably, again, one of my hardest gardening challenges when it comes to growing in my garden, because I grow again in some alleyway spaces, which are just, really, the pests just vary all over. They're flying in all over the place. And it just seems like I'm dealing with some new challenges every year. So just when I get one of them down or get one of them figured out, something else starts to come up again the next year. So it's one of those things. Each year I'm learning more and more about all the different things and techniques that I can do to take care of some of these different pests. For me, my biggest pest recently has been earwigs. Earwigs are just unbelievable. They populate again really fast, similar to like what we were talking about just a little bit before with all of those um, squash bugs. The similar thing. Earwigs are all over the place, and if you got small populations of them, they're not too big of a problem. But when they really start populating, when they really start getting all over everything, they can really create a lot of havoc in the garden. Let's see here. Shelly Stevenson said, every couple of years, I have to dig down really deep and dig out the neighbor's tree roots growing into my vegetable garden. So I have to cut them off. Yes, that's another thing too. Trees and tree roots and different things that end up, if you're growing close to other trees from other places, there's a lot of trees that have a lot of these, like, even ground level roots that come up to the surface, and they can really create a lot of problems for all of the root systems of the plants that you want to grow too. So being able to get in there and take out some of those weeds, and it was a real big issue for me. Again, I mentioned earlier too about this alleyway garden beds that we have. The neighbors had some trees that were right there next to it, and each year I would literally have to dig out and reset all of my soil because of having to dig into it to get rid of some of those tree roots that were invading that garden space. And luckily for me, they removed those trees this last year, and or actually just a couple of months ago. But like I also mentioned too, they also tore up one of my beds in order to remove those trees, and I'm having to rebuild that and put that all back together too. So hopefully now that that's all taken care of, we won't have much problem with that in the years to come. And Valdine Perry left us that says the animals are her biggest challenge. So I'm sure that goes for most gardeners who deal with animals like deer and other things, rabbits, even, I don't, where, if you live more out in the country, all of sorts of different animals can become such a huge pressure to what you're doing in the garden. So trying to keep things gated up or separated or some sort of ways in order to keep your garden separate from all of them too. So, that's a big issue for a lot of gardeners and a big challenge. And Carol Vogler says, the heat, I just can't handle it anymore. So Carol must live in a really warm place. Our area here where I grow in Southern Oregon, we get some pretty good winters, which we've just gone through these last several months, but we're looking forward to really hot summers. We get really hot summers. I live in this valley in Southern Oregon, the Rogue Valley, and we can get some really intense temperatures. And so again, the heat can be something. So, making sure you're taking measures to protect all of your garden plants and all of that, as well as yourself when you're out in the garden in that heat in the sun, is a good thing to do. Seem to be, again, in what we were left there with our different comments was, the idea that, some of the biggest garden challenges we just talked with Sisters in the Garden about, are pests. pests just seem to be one of those big ones that everybody has to deal with. Weeds and dealing with invasive different plants, whether they're from your neighbors or something you have in your garden you're trying to grow, can become issues as well too. So again, thanks everybody for leaving those comments there, again, on our Facebook growing group, the Let's Get Growing group on Facebook. You can check down below in the description of this video to a link there. Encourage all of you to come over and join us there and share all of your different garden experiences, as well as participating in our question of the week here for the Let's Get Growing show. And this next week's question that we'll be going over is, do you have a favorite plant or vegetable to grow in your garden? I know that we all have our favorites and our least favorite. So even if you have your least favorite, let us know as well too. And we'll talk about those in our question of the week segment for next week's show. So now it's time for our next segment, our channel of the week.
Hi, Ultimate Gardeners.
Hi, my name is Nathan.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Rachel.
Hi, Ultimate Gardeners.
See, again, I'm running this myself, so I got to watch what buttons I'm pushing here. But this week's channel of the week is Rachel of Oxheart Gardening.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a backyard gardener in South Carolina, and I have an audacious dream to change the way people think about growing food. We often approach growing food from an isolationist perspective. How do I keep these plants safe from the outside world? Protect them from pests and predators while bringing in all the nutrients they need to survive. But plants didn't evolve in a safe, isolated world. They formed relationships with the life around them, both harmful and beneficial, and created balanced ecosystems full of give and take. Large-scale farming, as it exists today, separates plants from the ecosystem at large, filling in the gaps left open with pesticides and fertilizers, which are a detriment to the earth as a whole. And these methods trickled down to home gardeners, who are now following the approach of pesticides to replace beneficial insect predators and fertilizers to replenish nutrients in dead soil. Through my garden as an example, I like to reverse this thinking from the ground up, with the new gardeners. I want to be an example and a teacher, showing new gardeners a different path. Instead of bringing in a pesticide, I try to think, how can I make this ecosystem more balanced? What does the predator for that pest need that I'm missing? Humanity is not fated to be simply a parasite to the earth. We can live symbiotically with the life around us, caring for it and receiving a harvest in return.
Awesome. Rachel. So
Hello.
glad to see you. Thanks for joining with us today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good today. Thank you.
All right. All right. It's really glad to have you here with us today. And really great trailer there too. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
You have a really nice channel. I've been following you for years now, and it's been really great to see you and your channel grow. So again, thanks for joining with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's jump right in this. When did you first get to garden? What was your first gardening experience?
So growing up, my mom did have a backyard garden. And when my mom was doing that, I did not think that I was going to become a gardener. But fast forward to college, and I'm suddenly confronted with I've started cooking a lot for myself, and I'm confronted with the price of food. And so in my apartment, I started a little herb garden on my balcony. And that was like really the first time that I tried growing stuff for myself to eat.
Awesome. So that was your first garden on a balcony?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of people's first garden too.
Again, yeah, as I shared with my garden story a few weeks back too, that was exactly how I got started with gardening. I was living in an apartment. All I had was a balcony, and I had a friend who gave me a little cucumber start. and that's where it all started for me. And it was a great experience, and love where it's taken me to today. So again, we take those first gardening thing experiences, and we grow this big garden passion and become more experienced gardeners as we grow along. So tell us a little bit about, what do you like most about gardening?
So now that I've really gotten into gardening, I think the thing that I like, there's like two major things that I like the most. One is getting to see like the full life cycle of a plant. A lot of times you buy food in the grocery store and you don't like really think about where it's coming from. Like the first time I saw a head of broccoli go from a head of broccoli to beautiful flowers, I was like, what? There's like so many things about these plants that we're eating all the time that we just don't see because they are delivered in a specific way to us at the store. And then the second thing that I really, really, really love about gardening is being able to share the harvest with people. I love being able to have my friends over and be like, hey, do you want to take a jar of salsa home? Do you want a jar of pickles? I just find that to be really gratifying.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things for me too is, being able to share with a lot of my friends and family and neighbors. I'd like to grow just a large variety of things. And some of them I don't even really prefer to eat myself, but I love growing them so much that I just grow them, and then I find a way to get them to other people who do like them, just so I can either get that gardening experience of growing those different varieties, like eggplant. I'm not much of an eggplant person, but I love growing the eggplant plants. They're such really cool plants, and the fruits are so awesome. Like you said, you get so many different varieties that you see. You only see a couple of different kinds, like if you're going to the store. That's all you're going to see. But you get and start growing them for yourself, you get to see that there are so many different varieties and so many cool things when it comes to it. But so what are some of your favorite plants to grow in your garden?
I would say my favorite plants are the peppers because they do kind of look like little jewels once they start ripening everywhere in the garden. And they also feel like the most cost-effective thing for me to grow. If we're thinking about store prices, like I use a ton of sweet peppers, and you go to the store and they're like $2 each for just one pepper. And it's, then I go out to my garden and I see my plant just loaded down with them. I'm like, yes.
Yes, that's awesome. And again, too, I really have to agree. Peppers were really, I started with a couple of different things, the usual tomatoes, cucumbers, and things like that. But when I moved on to peppers, that's when I think my obsession really began to burst. Because again, these peppers have so many different varieties, whether they're sweet all the way to these just really, really too intensely hot for me peppers. But again, each plant grows with their own kind of temperament. Each variety grows a different way when it comes to peppers, so they present that kind of fun gardening challenge in growing these different peppers. And then, like you said, again, similar to the eggplant, you get all these cool fruits that come off of them in all sorts of shapes, colors, sizes, and all of that. And one of my favorites I grow actually more for just an ornamental sense is this pepper variety called Chinese five color. And it's kind of like having this little Christmas tree in your garden, because they grow up and they actually grow in this upright fashion, but they have 5 different stages of colors. And when you get all 5 different stages together on one plant, it's really something cool to see. But yeah, I have to agree. Peppers are really a fun plant to grow in your garden. Now, you got that being your favorite. Do you have a least favorite, something that that you just really don't like to grow, or have presented a big challenge for you?
Yeah, so I think kind of famously, I'm bad at carrots. I don't dislike growing them. And the first time I ever grew them, I guess I must have had like magical success or something. They are the logo for my channel. And so it gets kind of embarrassing when I can't grow them, but they are a really huge challenge for me. But every year I try and try again, and I continue trying methods until I'm going to get solid carrots every year.
Yeah, similar to my challenge with the brassicas and cabbage is
Yes.
it's a challenge for me each and every year, but I am determined to get them going good. Carrots are actually something that, again, are kind of off and on for me. I probably, similar to you, had some really good success at first, and then as I tried my next couple of seasons, not so much. But last year, I was really able to get so many carrots growing out of our. Actually, I have these really cool, deep, elevated raised beds that I have on my back patio, and one of them I built specifically to grow big carrots in. And again, they didn't happen quite that well for a couple of seasons, but this last year, man, I got some really nice ones out of those containers. So hopefully you'll get those carrots down soon. They're so delicious, and again, so many cool varieties of them too. All right, so what inspired you to start a YouTube channel and to help people start their gardens?
It really just started with me getting into gardening, and this new place that I had old raised beds in the back that I decided to clear out and use. And I just kind of like threw myself into it head first, and I wanted to plant everything, and I was so excited about it. And I think my friends and family were getting a little tired of hearing about it. So I was like, I will just share this excitement with the people on YouTube. And from there, the concept kind of developed to helping out new gardeners who are also dealing with the same struggles as I was at the same time. And the longer I garden, the more the mission has changed. As you heard in the trailer, I am really trying to change the way that people think about growing their food, still focusing on the newer gardeners.
Yeah. And in fact, I do remember discovering your channel back a couple years back, and that's when I think I discovered your channel right around the time that you were moving on from those back little beds that you had there and moved into your new space that you're growing in now. And it's really cool to kind of see the evolution from that little small garden you had to this really nice big garden that you have now in the space you have. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition to a new space and what that meant for your garden?
It
Your
was,
gardening experience?
yeah, it was a big deal at the time when I was deciding to move. I was still going to be renting, but having a rental property that would allow me to do what I'm doing was like the number one priority. And I really lucked out with this place. The landlord is really great about it. He even like tilled up that whole patch for me with his own tractor. And as my family will tell you, the moving process was crazy because we had an entire U-Haul of all of my spring plants in pots because I moved in May, which is like just after when everything should have been planted. And I was like, I'm not going to miss a whole year because of this. But I got the garden started. It was late, but it was still beautiful and thriving. I was absolutely like blown away by how prolific it was. And now that I have had this space for a couple of years, I've learned a lot, especially because it's a little less urban than I was before. So the pest pressure is different. The entire environment around it is different. There's just a lot more to learn, which I really love.
Yeah, again, too, I got that kind of situation. I'm still kind of in limbo trying to figure out what's going to happen too, because I also rent as well too. But I've been gardening in the spaces that I've had for many years. I think about 10 years now I've been gardening in these spaces. And right now I'm trying to find out whether or not they're selling the place to a new person. So, I might possibly be looking at a very similar transition coming up soon, because it is, you said, also not the best time of year to be having to worry about whether or not we're doing that, because I could be running into the same situation probably just a little bit after May, maybe even into June, when I'll have to find a new space and all of that too. So we'll see what ends up happening when it comes down to it. But it's probably, I'm not going to be looking too forward to having to leave that space I'm used to behind. But again, we could be looking at some pretty new, cool opportunities when it comes down to it. So you've gotten to do your channel now for a few years now. Do you have any sort of videos or anything like that that you really have enjoyed, and are some of your favorites maybe of what you've done?
Oh, that's a pretty hard question. I guess I'm really glad that I started doing the weekly garden tours. That wasn't really originally the plan. Like I had seen people do garden tours like that over the summer. And I started that way. And then I just continued because people kept telling me that they enjoyed seeing the progress week to week. And I realized how valuable it was for people to see the garden during the season and in the off season. Because I think people can get really discouraged by just seeing like the beautiful productive part of the garden when they're looking at their winter garden and nothing is happening. So I'm really glad that I did that. And I think that's probably some of the more valuable content that people find on my channel is that full view of what gardening looks like week to week to week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I really enjoy those videos you do too, as well too. It is cool to see that progress when it goes. I'm one of the ones who do seasonal garden tours, and but to get to see it on a week to week basis, and also someone like yourself, you're really consistent with making sure you're doing that too. So that's something that everybody can look forward to by checking out your channel too, is to be able to have that really great consistency and seeing what's going on in the garden and all of that. So, do you have any future plans or projects or anything like that that you've got coming up that you're looking to do for your garden or your channel or anything?
So near future, not so much. But I am kind of looking forward into like my 5 and 10-year plan. I definitely would like to move out of a rental space into an owned space, hopefully like a much larger farm type situation, not like a huge farm, but room to have a lot of growing space. And I'm like considering the idea of actually moving towards not moving away from YouTube, but also adding on in-person type workshops at my own place, and giving people some hands-on experience in my community, because I think there's only so much you can learn through a screen, and going through the process yourself with your hands is really valuable.
Yeah, well, that would be awesome. That'd be really cool to have that opportunity to be able to teach people hands-on experience in the garden. And as we're finishing up here, I want to give you an opportunity to give anybody any advice or tips for new gardeners out there, because I know that's one of the things you like to do with your channel.
Yeah, I would say my biggest tip is don't be afraid to ask the silly, stupid, small questions. There are a lot of things that people who've been gardening for a long time say without thinking about, because they've just been doing it for so long. Like, oh, I'm just going to direct sow this thing. And most people who've been gardening know what that means. But for somebody who's like brand new, direct sow, what does that mean? And I think you should be encouraged to ask those questions, and don't feel like, oh no, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, no, ask those questions, find out, because most of us haven't been brought up on growing things, and we've come into the world with really no idea how plants work besides maybe a house plant or two. So there's really no shame in not knowing. Please, please, please ask questions, because you're going to get so much farther and have better help or better success dealing with your problems with that help.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can't agree more. There's no dumb questions when it comes to learning how to do something, because again, there's so much to know about gardening, and there's so many different aspects of gardening. Again, as we've talked about, from pests to, nutrients, all sorts of different things, soil makeup and all of that, so again, asking questions is great advice for new gardeners. And it's been really awesome to have you here with us on our show, Rachel. I've been really looking forward to it. So glad to have you here. Thanks again for joining with us here on Let's Get Growing.
I'm very glad I was able to make it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Again, well, go check out Rachel at Oxheart Gardening. Hey, gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits. So again, thank you everybody for joining with us today for this really great show. We've had some really awesome guests so far, and now it's time for our featured guest. This week's featured guest is Scott, head of Black Gumbo Gardening. Scott has been gardening since childhood and began his YouTube channel in 2014 as a way to teach whoever might tune in how to grow food in the hot subtropics of the Texas coast. The Black Gumbo Southern Gardening Channel is a teaching channel aimed at both beginners and intermediate gardeners, and showcases the good and the ugly in small backyard plot typical of suburban homes. Scott grows a wide variety of perennial and annual food crops and began the Single Seed Challenge, a very successful YouTube social experiment. Scott has been married for 30 plus years and has 3 children, all of whom learned a little gardening along the way. So let's welcome Scott to the show with us today. Hey, Scott, how are you doing?
How you
Welcome
doing?
to Let's Get Growing.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. Really awesome to have you here with us for our show. And again, too, let's start with getting into your garden story and talk a little bit about what was, those first gardening experiences for you.
My first gardening experience came when I was a kid. My dad gave me a 2-foot by 3-foot plot of hard clay on the side of our house and said you could grow stuff there if you want to. And so I immediately went and bought some lettuce seeds and some carrots and just random stuff and tried to grow. And well, lo and behold, I actually was able to grow a head of lettuce in that hard clay, and it was just dumb beginner's luck. But that got me started. And all my life, I was all my childhood and up through college, I was really interested in science, and I wanted to become a scientist. I wanted to be a biologist or marine biologist. So I studied a lot of science. I got to roam the fields and forests behind our house and just look at nature and appreciate plants. And that carried over into later life. College, though, killed my idea of being a science because I had an extinction level fail in organic chemistry that knocked me out of science altogether. And I fell back on what I was actually good at, which was creative stuff. But the love of science, love of nature, the love of plants was still there. Whenever I had my own place that had a place where I could garden, I set myself to gardening. I didn't know much about gardening, but all I knew is I got to do this. I have to grow things. And so I really appreciated that genetic package of a seed and all the genetics stored up in that seed. I thought it was a miracle that you can put that seed in the ground, grow an entire plant, and get fruit from it. It blew my mind, and it still does to this day. I just, when I put seeds in the ground, I'm still, after all these years, I'm still apprehensive that, is it going to work? Of course it's going to work. That's the way they're designed, but it still amazes me. And that's kind of why I started the Single Seeds Challenges. It's just an amazing thing. But that's why I got into gardening, is I just love nature. I love plants. I love to see things grow. I like the life cycle. And as a bonus, you get to eat the food. So, the food part of it is a plus, but that wasn't
Yeah.
the reason for starting gardening. So, yeah, I just love to watch plants grow.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers the question, but
I think that's a good answer for sure. I mean, there's nothing like, again, that experience of being able to take something from a seed. And, again, like you're saying though, too, is how this small little thing, sometimes, I mean, sometimes seeds can be, just smaller than the tip of a pencil, you know what I mean, on some varieties. And, and then you get to some of the bigger, cooler looking seeds, and, with those beans and stuff
Mhm.
that have all these really awesome seeds. But, you plant these out and then it just grows into this big, huge plant, depending on what you're actually growing. But,
Mhm.
just such a fascination for me as well too. I like that whole kind of science end of how all of that works and how that comes together, and learning about, how, soil, makeup and all of that, and how that
Yeah.
promotes these seeds to grow into these plants, and just all the different aspects of gardening are just so fascinating. Really, really
Yeah,
something.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and then again, too, like you said, you get all of these great plants. I mean, we talked about that even earlier. You end up with all these fruits and vegetables and everything that you get is kind of the bonus reward to
Yeah.
this, to what is originally your fascination of just growing the plants. And
Mhm.
again, as I was mentioning to Rachel, I grow some plants just to grow them,
Mhm.
because they're just really fascinating. I'm really fascinated on that level too. Like I was talking about
Yeah.
eggplants. And even though I'm not into eating them very much, I make sure I find people who can get to enjoy them, as well too, so I can enjoy the growing process.
I'll tell you something similar to that. I have a similar crop.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my creative my professional life for the bulk of my career has been in the creative side of things. I'm the creative director and illustrator, creative. Anyway, as a kid, I would read these golden books, these kids' books, and there was one in particular about a family of rabbits, and they had turnips, and they were pulling them out of the garden. And I something about seeing that with my eyes, being a visual person, liking the colors of that turnip. I determined at some point in my life, I'm going to grow those turnips. I don't even like turnips, but because I had seen them in a book and it made an impression on me when I was so young, sometimes I grow turnips just because I like to grow turnips because it takes me back to that book, And
Yeah.
I'll try to choke them down, but some things I just grow like you just say. Like I don't like eggplant either, but I'll grow eggplant. So I
Yeah,
understand that
exactly.
completely.
There might be a few things I would, I got like you say, choke down or whatever, or I'll try, if someone made, I had someone actually I gave some eggplant to, who shared with me some of this eggplant parmesan that they made, which is kind of like a eggplant lasagna.
Yeah.
And that wasn't too bad. I actually thought that wasn't that bad and all of that. But, again, I guess the further reward, even if you give those plants to other people and have them bring back something that you can enjoy out of it too. But again, just love to grow certain things just to grow them. That's for
Yeah.
sure. What are some of those favorite plants that you actually like to grow for your garden? Things that
Um,
you're looking forward to doing each and every year.
I just like the basic things. I like tomatoes and peppers. Those are
Hmm.
my favorite things to grow, and the reason they're my favorites is um, the variety that you can get. I mean, there are thousands of varieties of tomatoes and peppers out there, and
Yeah.
I like to try different varieties, searching for those ones that I like the best. And there's so many that you'll never exhaust the varieties of tomatoes to grow. Um, this year, I have to admit that I almost killed off my seedlings. I stunted them, the seedlings of the varieties I was trying this year, because we had a very late freeze, and the room in which my seed starting stuff is in got too cold. It stunted them. They're still alive, but they're way behind. So I had to go to the plan B, which was to buy some starts, which narrows down your selection of varieties down to some of the common varieties that like Better Boy and Celebrity. I've never grown those before because I always thought, oh, those are the big box store varieties that everyone else grows. But now I get to try them, and it occurs to me that, well, they're popular because they're good. People like them. You know, people wouldn't buy them if they weren't any good. So I get to try those varieties. And peppers, man, I love the peppers because I'm not really into the super hots, but like Rachel said, you see those things ripening on there. They're like jewels. They're like it's so colorful, and it makes you smile when you've seen your green pepper sitting there on the bush for weeks on end, and all of a sudden one day you walk into the garden and boom, they're red or they're orange or they're bright yellow. It's just so rewarding. So those are the ones I like the most in terms of annuals, but I've become more of a perennial lover these days, and I'm most excited right now about growing apples. Never knew I could grow apples in the subtropics, but my son and I did some research and learned that there's about 400 varieties of apple trees that do well here in the subtropics, even in the tropics. And one of the varieties I'm growing was actually developed here in the Houston area. So, and I'm getting my first crop of apples ever, and I'm so excited about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, actually, I'm looking forward to apples myself too. Again, I grow in small space. I don't really have the land to be planting trees in, which I wish I could do. Someday I'll have my own place, my own land, and that'll be the first thing I do is plant out a bunch of different fruit trees, especially apples, as being one of my favorites too. But we do grow them in some containers.
Yeah,
and I've got a container peach tree, which I've had now. This will be its 4th season. And last season, it finally gave me just like dozens of fruit. It was really awesome to be able to accomplish that, growing in a container. And now for the last couple of seasons, we've been growing our apple varieties. And last year wasn't the best for getting them, but they were just kind of maybe getting used to their containers after a couple of seasons. So this year, I've really got my hopes up that we'll have lots of different apples to be able to harvest off of our plants. And as well, I've got a fig tree and also a peach tree that we just got started up in the last season or two. And so hopefully we'll be seeing something off of those too. So, whether you got land or you got to grow in containers, growing trees and fruiting trees is a really great thing to do because, again, like you said, it's a perennial. You're going to get this year after year after year. Once those really get established, that's something you can really look forward to, without all of the real work it takes, starting something from seed and growing it throughout the season like you do with annuals.
Yeah, the perennials are actually I don't have a lot of space either. I've just got a suburban backyard, but I stumbled upon backyard orchard culture. That's a method or a technique of keeping trees small and stunted. And so that's the experiment. We'll see if it works. That's a long-term project that hopefully over the years I'll be able to build up some helpful videos that might be useful to folks.
Yeah. And another one of my favorite perennials though too that we grow is blueberries. I've got these big, large totes, and we actually moved blueberry plants that I grew in the ground. They weren't in the best space, weren't doing very well for a couple of seasons. So I finally decided, let's pull them up out of the alleyway ground, stick them in these large totes. And now for the last couple of seasons, I've just been getting so many blueberries off of these things. And it's, again, one of those things that, year after year is something to look forward to. And I ain't got to do much work other than maybe kind of prune them back a little bit or shape them up just a little bit. But for the most part, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, so, that's great. I'm an expert. I'm an expert at killing blueberries. I can't grow them.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. Again, with these ones, it took a while for me to get them figured out. I put them in a space where I'm not sure if it was, because of the soil, which I, probably was, or if it was just necessarily where it was in the, getting like way too much direct sun because the plants, were getting a lot of leaf burn. So I decided, like I said, to pull them up out of the ground and stick them in these big totes so I can kind of move them to a place that would be best for them, and also to be able to control a little bit of the acidity of the soil,
Right.
because blueberries just really want a real acid soil, and I think that's, that's really what does the trick, so maybe that's something you could try, is put them in a big container and get them some really good acid loving nutrients and soil and all of that. So what is it that well, we talked about your favorite plants to grow. What is it that's some of your least favorite plants to grow in your garden? What, kind of present a challenge for you, or you just don't, you tried growing and you just don't do it anymore?
Spinach, leafy greens. I I have trouble growing spinach specifically. I don't know why, but every time I've tried spinach, um, it either doesn't grow well for me. It's the wrong season, wrong variety, or it just gets munched to the ground by pests. I don't like to grow. Well, I should say I'll save that for if we talk about challenges. I don't like to grow leafy greens so much. The weather just doesn't cooperate here. It's usually too hot. Everything bolts. And if I try to grow it in the wintertime or over the fall, I end up with we get a freeze or something. Thank you, appreciate it. Sorry, I'm outside actually. This is real YouTube life, right? Some
That's
mailman
right.
showed up. So I'd have to say it's the leafy greens and things like that. I'm just not a fan. That there's low success rate for me with leafy greens.
All right, yeah. I That's one of, again, probably because of our different regions and all that. That's just one of those things that works out for me so well, and so a
Mhm.
lot of my leafy greens too, after I harvest them, I'll leave some of them behind so that they can go to seed. And anymore, I just get them popping up all over the place on their own. So, that's kind of a, you know, by luck too, that I get to have a lot of those in my
Mhm.
garden and get to enjoy them. Spinach, is one of those ones that, again, will do really well, but if I keep them, early in the cooler season. But as soon as that sun starts peeking out, as soon as the temperatures even get, 80s with any couple of bright sunny days, then they just immediately bolt,
Mhm.
and that's just one of the hardest challenges with that, because I love spinach. Spinach is probably one of my favorite greens of all to, you know,
That's
not just to
exactly
grow,
how it
but to
works.
have.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works here. We have our winters, which you can usually grow through the winter here. But then more often than not, it goes from winter straight into 80-degree weather, and that's what happened this year. So our spinach just wouldn't last, even if I got it growing, even if I protected it from the freeze we had.
Yeah.
But I did find there's a perpetual spinach. It's called perpetual spinach. It's a Swiss chard actually, but it tastes more like spinach than chard. I've grown
Yeah.
that, and it's grown. It will grow year round for me. It grew through. It had snow sitting on top of it, and it went through our blazing summers like a champ. So, I mean, if somebody wants a foolproof leafy green, that perpetual spinach is actually something that I've been able to grow. So I probably think most folks should be able to grow it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. There's a question being asked to take us back to your apples. We have someone joining with us. Bloom, where you're planted, asked about. They live in Dallas, and we're wondering about the different apple tree varieties. What are some of those apple tree varieties you're trying, or some of them that you would recommend for that region?
I would recommend that you can I mention a business on here?
Sure.
I would
Sure.
recommend you look up Cuffle Creek Apple Nursery online. Cuffle Creek used to be in California, but they've since moved to Uganda where they're growing apples. It's kind of their mission to grow apples in the tropics, and
Yeah.
that's where I got my apples from. I have the impression they will be coming back to the United States, but on their website, they publish a list of varieties of apples that are heat tolerant and low chill hours. And Mr. Cuffle publishes a little online booklet that you can buy that teaches you how to grow apples in the heat. And he says, when you're talking about the subtropics, throw out all the chill hour information. It doesn't matter. These varieties, they just do well. So some of the varieties I'm growing a Fuji, which is a Japanese Japanese apple, an Anna, which is an Israeli apple tree. And with the Anna, you have to grow co-pollinators. So the classic pair is the Golden Dorset. So I'm growing that one. I'm growing a variety called Shell of Alabama, which is also an early variety. So those three, if you're going to grow one of them, you need at least one of the others. And those are the ones that are fruiting right now. They're the early varieties. I'm also growing a King David. I can't see the tag from here. I've got a few of them in containers that I'm going to use for grafting stock later on. But yeah, there's a lot of apples. There's about 400 different varieties that are on the list of tropic tolerant apples. And I didn't know this. I thought you had to live like in zone 6 and above to grow, apples. I know we can grow peaches and stone fruits here and pears and weeds, but I didn't know you could grow apples. But that's why I'm so excited. I'm actually witnessing these apples go through 100-degree summers and still bear fruit in my backyard. It's amazing to me. So those are some of the varieties, but check out the list at Cuffle Creek. He publishes a list of heat tolerant apples.
Yeah, excellent, especially for all of you in those areas where you don't think that you can grow them. That's, I guess that's one of the cool things again about gardening is learning all of these new things. Some of the things we get these preconceived conceptions about certain things as we're learning about them, but then comes along somebody who can show us, hey, wait a minute, no, you can actually do this. You've just got to try it and work these different methods in order to do that. So again, really great to see that you're able to grow some apples there too. Let's see here. Got someone who mentioned, let's see. LP says, have you tried amaranth, Kalula? The young leaves of amaranth are used as spinach substitute.
I've never grown amaranth on purpose. We have a wild variety here that comes up every now and then in my garden, but I've never grown it on purpose. So maybe that's something I could try.
Yeah. I don't think I've tried that either myself too. So again, something we could try in our gardens if you're looking for something that's kind of a spinach substitute. Longevity spinach, that's something I've actually grown the last few years as well too, and that's something that grows well during the summertime, during those hot months and everything. And really simple too. I got gifted some pieces of longevity spinach plants, and I just each year, when I'm done and it starts heading towards the cool season, I just cut the tops off of them and I stick them in a jar of water, and then they root out and they kind of sit there in the warmer house and everything for the cool season. And then when it starts warming up again, I just put them right back out and plant them out in the garden, and they start growing all over again. So I started with one set of cuttings probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and keep getting them growing year after year after year. So that's another one that I really recommend too if you're looking for a heat tolerant spinach substitute.
Yeah, there's also another one. I believe it's called Malabar spinach. I didn't like it. I grew it a couple of years ago. It's slimy, and the sliminess kind of put me off. But it grew like crazy. In fact, it grew so crazy it was almost invasive, and I could almost not get rid of it. But if folks are looking to try a heat tolerant spinach substitute, Malabar, I think it's called Malabar spinach. You guys probably know what I'm talking about, the slimy stuff that finds everywhere.
Yeah, excellent. Now, so again, too, our question of the week this week was, what are your biggest gardening challenges? What are those things that challenge you the most in your garden?
I have a couple of them. The heat of summer combined with me growing older in age, that's really tough. You know,
Yeah.
the heat, you never really get used to the heat. And it's not just the heat. I live on the coast, so we have high humidity, and we actually have a cooling effect from the Gulf of Mexico. So we're not as hot as, like, it gets hotter up in Dallas than it gets here. I'm in the Houston area. I'm kind of in between Houston and Galveston, but it gets hot. And that discourages me from my summer garden. And oftentimes, you know, it's a challenge to get out there and do the weeding that needs to be done and the watering and the upkeep. Because I treat summer as its own season here. I have a spring garden, and then I have an overlapping summer garden where I plant heat tolerant crops like okra and cowpeas and eggplant, even though I don't like eggplant.
Yeah.
You know, you still got to plant stuff. The peppers go through the summer well, but it's hard to get out there. So that's my biggest challenge in terms of just the overall garden. I have a challenge called the squash vine borer. I can't grow squash because there's too many vine borers here. I want to grow squash. I want to grow big pumpkin, you know, vines, but they kill me every time, no matter what I do. So that's a big challenge. But here's another thing that I think Gardner Scott, who is on in the chat today, he talked about this, and we talked about this together not long ago. I think the weather is moving to where perhaps there's a new norm in terms of the weather patterns
absolutely.
in my area with the colder freezes in the wintertime. In the past 3 years, we've had 2 major freezes that were really unheard of for our region. Down into the teens is unheard of around here, but you know, it'll drop there for an hour or so. But I mean, here the last couple of years, it's been hovering there and staying there for days at a time. That's a real challenge. That will challenge me to have to change my gardening methods, my timing, the things that I choose to grow. You know, I love to grow citrus, but I've got a poor lemon tree in the ground that's died back twice in 3 years, and that's a real challenge. So I have to pay attention. You know, all of us gardeners, we need to pay attention to the changing patterns and adapt to them. And I think that's a hard challenge because we get set in our ways. You know, March 1st is my average last frost date, but I couldn't put anything in this year until 2 weeks after that. At least I know it's an average, but you know, you get set in your ways and you target March the 1st, or you target whatever date it is for you. You know, those dates might be changing. Who knows? So that's a challenge to me.
Yeah, well, you know, I definitely agree on that point as well too. I mean, I've just been learning to grow and garden over, you know, I started 10, 11 years ago here in Southern Oregon. And, you know, it's one thing to start learning methods and growing and dealing with certain things and all of that. But as over these last 10 years, each year progressively has changed as far as the climate. And we're seeing different things, you know, a little bit different than what you're experiencing there down there. And it's Texas, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, for us up here in Oregon, you know, it's not necessarily the extreme winters. We're getting more extreme summers, you know, and that's also, again, something, you know, as you were mentioning there too, we also had Greg Peterson on with us this last week. And he was talking about, you know, he gardened out of Arizona. And one of the things that, you know, he had to, you know, he talked about was kind of similar to what you were mentioning as well, is that when you get into that real heat of summer and you get into that sort of situation, that's kind of his, like, what a lot of us more to the north will do is take the winter off because things just freeze up, and it's, you know, that's our time to kind of hunker down and plan for the next season, all of that. Well, it's kind of the opposite when you're down in the south like that in extreme heat. You're kind of taking the summer off and then planning for those other, you know, for the fall, winter, and spring seasons. So, you know, and again too, it's just it's amazing, you know, to see, you know, within your own, you know, these sort of climate changes that are supposed to be lifetimes of changes happening within, you know, a decade or so, and you experience that sort of stuff. And then again, like you said, presenting that challenge well, we're learning something, as we're going along, but then we have to change those things we learn because, we have to adapt to this different type of climate situation that's happening.
Yeah, it's not a catastrophe or anything. I mean, the climate
Yeah.
throughout the history of the earth, climate's fluctuated. I mean, you still got to grow your food, right? You just have to learn how to
Yep.
adapt and
It's adapting. Yeah.
overcome.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see here. So let's move on to, you have a really great channel, a channel I've been following for quite a while now. I really enjoy, again, I enjoy watching channels no matter where they're from. I just like to see the experiences of different gardeners in different areas. You've had a really great channel for a while. I think you're actually probably, you're just a little bit away from hitting 200,000 subscribers on your channel. How about that? That's pretty awesome.
I never imagined, and stats show, the analytics looks like that's going to happen in this spring. So that'll be a real joyful milestone. I'm very grateful that people think I have content that's worthy of their time. So
yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, that'll be a great accomplishment for your channel. Really looking forward to that for you. So what inspired you? I mean, you're out there gardening and learning about all these things. You're enjoying the fascination of growing things, but then comes the mind or the thought, hey, let me put this on YouTube. What inspired you to do that?
Well, I mean, I have to admit that I love to teach. I've just always had this compulsion to teach. And back in the dinosaur days when blogs were all the rage, I had a blog about everything that I was ever into. I have a lot of hobbies. My wife said hobbies are my hobbies. So every single thing I did, I had a blog about it, and was pretty successful with some of them. I had a ancient coin collecting blog, a gun blog, a gardening blog, a cooking blog. I mean, every kind of thing I ever did, I felt compelled to share it. I got into video professionally, and it occurred to me, well, I can make my own videos and put them on YouTube. And so I kind of transitioned away from blogging about the garden. And I guess it was 2014 or so, I made my first YouTube videos, and they were terrible, but I put them up. My family liked them, and I gathered up a few viewers here and there. And I didn't really plan on, I'm going to be a successful YouTuber. I'm going to start making money on YouTube. I'm going to get 200,000 subscribers. No, I just felt like I needed to share what I was doing with whoever wanted to watch. And it just kind of morphed from there. After, it was a couple of years, YouTube sent me a letter. Google sent me a letter and said, hey, you can monetize now. You've met the criteria. And I didn't even think of that. I wasn't even planning to go that way. But things in life had changed in my private life, my professional life. Things had changed, and I was no longer a creative professional. I did some freelance work, but I'm like, yeah, I kind of need the money. I became a pastor is what happened, and which is teaching. I became a pastor, and well, you don't make a lot of money as a pastor unless you're one of those fake TV pastors. So I thought, well, okay, I'll monetize. And so that's kind of what happened. I monetized, and now I see my YouTube channel as a very happy, not so much of an accident, but a blessing. It's actually helpful, and I'm motivated to not take the summer off when it's hot outside. I'm motivated now to press on, even when it's added motivation, because now I know that there's people that want to watch. Now I know there's people that, I shouldn't say they depend on the videos, but they tell me that their garden is doing well because of something they saw in my video, and that makes that's the reward right there. That kind of keeps me accountable to the audience that feels like they should invest time watching my videos. So that's how I started YouTube. It was almost accidental, but it was just out of a compulsion to teach.
Yeah. Mine, little, similar but a little bit different. I don't necessarily, and I've always kind of had that a hard time with the idea of being a teacher because of me being such learning from such basics, and I started my channel back in 2017. I just wanted to kind of, just show people again, like what I say, my garden adventure, just kind of
Mhm.
show people as I'm learning, what I'm learning, that sort of thing. I've gotten a little more comfortable with the idea of being able to teach people things as I've learned more and more about what I'm doing. But again, it's kind of similar in the senses that, things kind of worked into, this just starting out as something that I could do just to, for one, kind of journal and have something I can look back on.
Mhm.
And be able to check out. And you mentioned those early videos. It's hard to look back on some of those for sure. But, it's great to have that kind of, that kind of history to look back onto. And
Yeah.
and then turns into kind of this, like you're saying, happy surprise. You get
Mhm.
people starting to follow along with what you're doing, people who start responding and giving you feedback with the things that you're putting out there with your videos. And, there's nothing better than to get a comment from somebody telling you how much their garden is improved or different, or they're enjoying their experience just a little bit more
Yeah.
because of being able to watch what you're doing with your channel and everything. That's just really great. I've biggest thing I've gotten out of all of this is, being able to gain that, wider gardening community who
Mhm.
makes what I do even more enjoyable. Because, let's be honest, it's not that easy getting out there with a video camera and trying to time things out right, or to do certain things when you're working to put together certain video
Yeah.
projects. And then
Yeah.
also, like you said, it's great to have that reward
Uh-huh.
of the monetization and all that stuff too, and be able to look at it as sort of a business as well too.
Yeah, making videos about gardening adds a whole nother layer of work to gardening. You're not just
Yeah.
out there gardening. It looks like it on video, and you put together a story, you edit it well, I try to cultivate, all gardening channels are a little bit different, but each gardening channel has a different feel to it. And I try to cultivate the feeling of, I'm just your next door neighbor, backyard
Yeah.
gardening, just come hang out with me. And we'll learn something together.
Yeah.
But I also try to be truthful about when I have failures, or I've taken down videos because I since I later learned that the things that I was showing were actually wrong, um, and, uh, and I try to learn as I go, like kind of like what you said. I'm not really a gardening expert.
Yeah.
I've learned what I do in my backyard. I've learned what works and what doesn't work, and I've learned a little bit about gardening along the way. Um, you know, but if I were to be placed before people for like a question and answer on gardening, it's like somebody asked me just today in my comment section, how long did tulip bulbs keep? I don't know. I've never grown tulip bulbs. I have no clue. But
Yeah.
I try to be truthful, and I think there are some channels out there that unfortunately aren't truthful about gardening, and that's harmful. So I try to be a place where
Yeah.
if I'm going to say something on my channel, I believe that it's the truth. So I hope
Yeah.
that that comes across.
Yeah, absolutely agree. This is, that's just the same thing for me. I didn't want to be one of those people because as I was early on years ago, just starting my garden and gardening experience, YouTube was something I was relying on. And then you start finding information that isn't very reliable,
Yeah.
and when I started my channel, I didn't want to come on to be this, again, like you're saying, gardening expert or that sort of thing. Yeah, I wanted to share my gardening experience and kind of have one of those channels where, again, we do learn things along the way. We do have things to be able to teach when it comes to the different aspects of our own certain garden experience.
Mhm.
And that's something I like to share as well too. I've become a little bit more comfortable with, but there are garden experts, in my opinion, that are out on YouTube that I would just, if you were to ask me, I would recommend, if you've got these questions, about these different things, as you mentioned there too. I would point people in those directions,
Yeah.
like Gardner Scott. You
Oh, yeah.
mentioned him just a little bit earlier. This guy is who I call the quintessential YouTube gardener. He's literally one of the best people you can get some gardening advice from. He does a weekly Monday morning, question and answers live stream, which is, if you've got questions about gardening and you want to know what's up and get some really great advice, that's where I recommend people to go. And then come along with me and my channel, to, see my experience, what I do, learn a little bit about what I do with my small spaces. And then, and then also too, which, really, again, thinking about what I wanted to do when I was coming to live streams. I started live streaming, a few years ago, but I didn't see myself similar to like Gardner Scott. I'd have people come on and ask me questions, and I'm like, well, I don't know this advice, that you're asking about. I'll send you this direction. So I learned that wasn't where I was going to be going or what I needed to be doing when it came to live streaming. So that's kind of how this whole show kind of started. That's what I want to do. I want to meet people. I want to meet all these great, awesome people who are in the gardening community. I want to be able to have a platform where we can all kind of share our experiences, talk about our enjoyment for gardening and all of that too. So
I was just gonna say that's one of the beauties of YouTube. And I mean, back before YouTube, I was gardening before the internet existed, and you had to work hard just to find information. You had to go to the library, check out books and read, and not see physical demonstrations. It was tough. So the gardening community and YouTube in general, it's a great, you can learn anything. And there are those experts out there that I like to point people to that I know they're an expert because they've proven it. I like Gardner Scott too.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites. I really enjoyed to be able to have him on one of our first shows, of the year for us, and it was really great. In fact, he's in our chat box right now for anybody who might have a gardening question that we can't answer here. Definitely check out Gardner Scott for sure. So again, you've been doing your channel now for several years and all of that. Do you have any kind of favorite videos or collaborations or anything you've done?
I saw Rachel's response when you asked her that. I don't know.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
I do actually. There's one called "Don't Be Afraid of Change," and it was an emotional, personal video because we took down my children's trees that they used to swing in and had tree fort. I had to change the backyard. I needed to expand my garden. I wanted to do the apple trees. I wanted to do a small orchard. But I had these gigantic, useless Bradford pear trees that we called the jungly place. And my children, for the past 20 years, have been playing over there and playing in it. There are forts in there. Well, we took them down. We finally did that, and I enjoyed that video a lot because it wasn't really so much a gardening video as a motivation video kind of thing. Don't be afraid to change. So that was one of my favorites that I made. I like the cooking videos, though they don't perform very well for my channel, but I'd like to cook what we grow.
Oh yeah. Those are you talk about. Those are the videos I don't necessarily feel comfortable. I'm not a person who's good in the kitchen, so when it comes down to it, you probably won't ever see any cooking videos on the Urban Gardener channel. But it's good to have all of you who do enjoy that to be able to share some of that stuff, because it is kind of one of those, important things, when you're growing food is, how do you prepare that food? How do you, save that food and do that sort of stuff, which is also, I think, another thing that Rachel does really well on her channel is, preservation and that sort of thing as well too. So, but
well, she has she's got the room now to grow like enough food that you can put food by, you can can it, you can make sauce. That's been my problem. Is I have my garden's so small, and I plant a lot of smaller groups of diverse crops for the sake of my YouTube channel, so I can demonstrate more things. That it's kind of more, I call it a teaching garden so much rather than a produce production garden. So,
Yeah.
I don't get a ton of food to store away, although one day I'd maybe like to have a little more land, but I love to cook it. And sometimes when I'm watching actual YouTube cooking videos, I'm like, oh, don't use that. You bought that at the store. It's covered in pesticides. Here, I have a cabbage, take mine. But yeah, I love
Yeah.
cooking videos. I just don't, they don't perform well because, you need to stay in your lane on YouTube
Right.
if you want to be
Yeah.
successful. So,
Yeah, switching it up a little is a little different for people. So leave it to those who are the chefs, right? And that's what they're doing and what their shows are all about and everything. So let's see here. I got a question for you here from Jordan Marie Organics. My question for you today during the interview is, what is the most important piece of gardening advice you would give to the gardening community based on all of your experiences?
yeah, I saw that. I saw that question earlier, and I said that I would think about it, and I wrote down some notes. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give to any gardener is to remain positive because you're going to have challenges. You're going to do things wrong. You're gonna have failures. Um, Remain positive and think long term because gardening is a long term. If you want instant gratification, gardening's not for you. You collect stamps or something, but um, we've got to learn as gardeners to be resilient and to expect challenges to come. We need to learn to meet those challenges and not be frustrated by them such that we quit. We need to solve our challenges, get on YouTube and figure out how to solve the challenge or the problem and push through. Don't give up. Gardening can be so encouraging, but it can also be very discouraging. Um, you know, last year was my year for pestilence in the garden, and it could have really turned me off. It could have really frustrated me. And if I was a new gardener, I probably would have given up. So that's the biggest piece of advice I can give. It's not even really gardening advice. It's just persevere and push through and keep a positive attitude because, we're dealing with nature here. And the plants that we grow in our vegetable gardens are so bred and so specialized that all the wild's basically been bred out of them, and they need your care. They need you to stay positive so that they'll grow, so that you can tend them, because everything in the world wants to eat them. Every bug, everything wants to kill your plants, and it's going to happen from time to time. So that's my biggest advice: is expect that to happen and be ready for it to happen and be ready to push on. So that's it.
Yeah, really great advice, and that's something I share with a lot of people too, whether I'm on these different, chat groups or different things when it comes to gardening is, a lot of people talk about how, they just get too frustrated or they're not doing certain things. And I'm like, well, just pull back a little bit, understand that, especially for your first few gardens, it's not everything you're looking to grow is going to work out. And I've used this analogy before. I'm a big baseball fan, so whether or it doesn't matter what sport you're into, that sort of thing is that you might not have the best season, but you know what, there's always another season.
Yeah.
And just keep yourself looking forward, to, learning through these different things. As we've talked about today, being our question of the week was, what are your gardening challenges? Well, there's so many challenges when it comes to growing a garden.
Yes.
Pests, weeds, nutrients, just, all sorts of different things, your weather, your climate, all these things. And, sometimes that's going to present enough of a challenge to really, kill off or not be successful, whatever it is you're trying. But don't give up. Learn through those things, find and grow, your passion for growing things through your learning these sort of things, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, Scott. And, really great advice for all the gardeners out there too. And, really great to have you with us here on our Let's Get Growing show. And, thanks for joining with us today.
Yeah. Very glad that I could. Very glad to be here. So it's always nice to link up with other YouTube gardeners.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I think I'm loving the most about doing this show right now is, getting a chance to, have these conversations, talk about, gardening and growing and, YouTube or, if that's what,
Hmm.
what you're
It's
doing and all of that or the,
it's a fantastic idea what you're doing, and I also like the fact that you're highlighting some of the smaller gardener channels, because just because the channel is small doesn't mean that the gardener on that channel is not very, very good at what they do. They may have just started, but they may have
yeah,
30 years of gardening experience behind them. They may, you know, I follow, like you said earlier, I follow channels that aren't even anywhere near my growing area. I follow a prairie plant girl up in Saskatchewan, Canada, just because I like to watch her show. I follow
yeah.
these smaller channels like one up in Massachusetts. I like up there just because I like to watch them grow, and it's nice to see what you're doing to kind of bring a lot of these gardener channels to light. It's really good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that too. That again was really our big ultimate goal with starting this whole show and doing this with our live streams was to, bring that connection, bring the gardening community together to be able to, not just learn from each other, as we talk about advice and all of that, but it's just to really get to meet each other,
Right.
through some really fun gardening conversation. And that's exactly what we got today here, Scott. Thank you so much again for joining with us and giving us a great garden conversation this week.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
You got it. We'll see you. All right. All right, everybody. So that is about it for us for this week's show. Again, thanks to Scott Head from Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. Be sure to go check out his channel. We got links down below for all of our featured guests this week. And again, thanks to Rachel Andorfer of Oxheart Gardening. She's got a really awesome channel. I encourage you to check out those links. Go to Sisters in the Garden on Instagram and go check out what they've got there too. Again, so many great gardeners in our garden community, so much fun and conversations. And, all in all, I think we did okay today with me just manning everything all myself. So, this is where I have to really say how much I really appreciate my producer, Asia Darling, who is usually right over there and looking right across the way. And she's taking care of pushing all of these buttons and everything for us to make sure everything's going all right. So this week was really a good lesson in how much I really appreciate the work that she does to help make sure that our show moves along and all of that too. So, we'll hopefully have her right back with us again this next week to be able to take care of all this sort of stuff here for us. And so, again, one of the things I want to mention to everybody as well, again, is that our sponsor, Ivy Organics, is a great way to support our show is to go support Ivy Organics and go check out their website, ivyorganics.com. Use our promo code GROW10 so that you can save 10% off of all the things that they have there in their website. And be sure to give this video, this live stream, a big thumbs up, and hit that like button there for us. Leave some comments too now that the show's over, or if you're, watching on replay, go down into our comments section, leave us some comments, tell us what you think of our show so far. We've now in our week 5, we've had 5 great featured guests and a bunch of other great people to join with us in our garden show here too. It's been really fun so far. So be sure to get down there in that comment section and let us know what you think about all of that going on there. And yeah, so that'll do it. We'll see you all this next week. Oh, actually, yes, I do have to mention, I'm really excited about this next week. It's actually going to be a pre-taped interview that we just did recently with Jared Gettle, who is the founder of everybody's favorite seed company, Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. He gave us a really great conversation. So I hope that you all come and join with us this next week to see our interview with Jared Gettle of Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. So with that, from all of us here at Let's Get Growing, have a great week, and we'll see you all this next Saturday.